I rise in support of House Bill 14, but in a much broader sense, I rise in support of justice, and specifically of giving the victims of these most heinous crimes in our society access to it. A number of years ago, I stood at a rally here in the Capitol in support of doing exactly that, back at a time when legislation like this, whether a bill or an amendment to the Constitution, was far off from being considered in either chamber. And I remember several victims approaching me after the rally and telling me how courageous I was for standing up as a legislator and publicly supporting their cause. I shook my head and I told them that I was not the courageous one, that they who bear this pain for the rest of their lives, as we've heard here today, and yet have been able to step forward publicly and speak about that and ask that they and their brothers and sisters who likewise have suffered have a right to redress. They're the ones who have the courage. The gentleman whose letter the senator from Allegheny County just read, our colleague from Delaware and Chester counties, and thousands more like them across this Commonwealth, who had to bear horrible, horrible events caused by these abusers, are asking us to do something that's so simple: to give them the right to go to court. This isn't something that's going to make their lives better at the end of the day. It's not something that's ever going to heal those wounds. But it will give them some measure of justice. And yes, I'm sure all of us on the Democratic side will vote for House Bill 14 if it is the best thing that we can get, if it is the only thing we can do to actually move this forward. But it shouldn't have to be. There's no reason that we can't pass a bill like the one that we've proposed that would give these victims access to the courts right here and right now. The governor said he'll sign it. And if you're worried about the constitutionality of that, let the courts decide. Why should anyone be afraid to allow the courts to make that decision? There's absolutely no logic to the argument. But what is happening here is that we're letting more time pass. And we're telling these victims that once again they have to wait. And if you don't think it's an emergency for them, who have waited all this time to get some sense of vindication, some sense of justice, then you've closed your ears to their stories. They deserve that day in court, not 2 years from now, but now. And there's no reason that we can't give them that right now. This is about justice. It's about doing the right thing. It's about letting these victims at long last, after all the impediments that have been thrown in front of them, after all the powerful interests that have stood up time and time again to say no, after all the powerful interests that have stood up time and time again to cover up what had happened, all so that they would not take any blame or face any liability. This is about finally saying to these victims, enough. We're sorry. We're sorry that as a society, it took us this long to stand with you. We're sorry that you had to suffer because there was no one there to protect you. And we know we can never make that right. But we can at least give you what you've long sought and what you deserve, which is access to justice, to bring those responsible to court so that they must pay for what they did or failed to do. Shame on us if we're unwilling to take that step today. Shame on us if we're unwilling to pass a simple bill that, if it were brought to the floor, I have no doubt would pass overwhelmingly, and we know the governor would sign in an instant. Shame on us. We can do better. These victims deserve better. I implore each and every one of us to look deep inside and decide that the time is now to do exactly that. Thank you, Mr. President.